right? Now, last week we saw the pervasiveness of the religious concerns for the social realm of things, all right? It's pervasive, right? From politics to societies to companies, it's huge. The Christians' concern in the social, environmental effects that are going on, injustices, is pervasive. So much so it goes into religion, into politics as well. It's a big part of the world today, the Christians, or rather religious social concern. Now today we want to move then, knowing that this has been so pervasive, the Christian being involved in social concerns, social activism. All right, we want to see how things progressed, how things will progress from social concerns, all right, to the full-blown issues, all right, from social concerns to the full-blown social gospel. How will it develop to that? Now that is the key purpose today. Now please pay attention to this. The important thing to note today is how things will progress if we are not careful. Please remember that is what we want to achieve. Why? Because if we are not aware of how things progress in the past and developed into the full-blown social concerns, social gospel, all right, both in denominations and in churches, we can easily, the BP movement, BPism, can easily also fall into that. That is the first reason. I say again, if we are not aware of the trends, how it led to full-blown social gospel, we can fall into that. Now, the second reason for wanting to understand the progress, how it progresses from social concern to the full-blown social gospel is this. Do not be the group that bring such things into the BP movement or into the church. I say again, knowing how things progress from social concern to social gospel, do not be the one to introduce these things into BPism, into the BP movement, or into the church, all right? So that is what we want to learn from today. Before we go further, let us turn to God in prayer. Our Father in heaven, we bow before you, seeking, O God, that you would open our eyes of understanding, that, Lord, as individuals, we may be protected. As a church, we may be kept pure. As a movement, we may be kept loyal to your truth. And Lord, help us never to be the one to fall into this error that would cause, Lord, your truth, your work, be distracted and waylaid. And Father, we pray that you grant to us alertness of mind and discernment of heart. We pray again for the cleansing and the washing thoroughly in the blood of our Savior. Lord, be with us and grant to us concentration, we pray, for the protection of your church and your kingdom's work. In Jesus' name, amen. Now, first and foremost, for today's agenda, we want to see the Christian and social concerns, all right? What are some of the Christian concerns today, the Christian directly involved? Last week we saw in the political realm, right? Political realm. This week we want to see in the ecclesiastical realm, the church itself. Now I think you'll be surprised to see things up there like Methodism, all right? The Methodist movement and what they call the social holiness, all right? Now how is this part of the development into social gospel? Then the third section will be about missionaries, all right? Missionaries, our work, our calling, evangelism, right? How we must be careful in these areas as well, specifically in one area, particular area of missionary work, all right? So 3 areas. Now, so let's begin quickly as the church, ecclesiastical realm, the Christian and the church. Now, what is it like today when it comes to social concern? I'll just bring up some examples, all right? Just some examples. Now, Compassion. Compassion is a Christian international holistic child development organization. Some of you may be familiar. Some of you may have actually been approached by them before and maybe even participated in some of their programs. Now, through our child sponsorship program, more than 2 million children are currently being released from poverty in Jesus' name. So they say, in Jesus' name, we want to release children from poverty, all right? So Now, they call themselves compassion because, well, Christians should be compassionate. Many children are suffering. So this organization has a very clear focus to grant relief to children around the world that are suffering, all right, from poverty, from abuse, and so on, in the name of Jesus. So the Christian work, compassion, all right, compassion, releasing children from poverty. So, well, some of the things they put, well, they're Christ-centered, child-focused, and church-based. So they openly say, we are a church-based organization. We are a Christian organization, Christ-centered. And our Christian church-based work is to focus on releasing children. Any child in any country from poverty, all right? So the Christian being involved in the social concerns of society. Now, another example, Baptist World Aid. Baptist World Aid. All right, so now it's a bit small. We dream of a world where poverty has ended and all people enjoy the fullness of life God intends. All right, we've been committed to this vision since 1959. Baptist World Aid. So the Baptist denomination has an arm, right, that is very focused on this. Dreaming of a world where through the Christian social engagement, we can remove poverty ended. That is the dream, all right? Social concerns, and people of the world enjoy the fullness that God intended. God intends fullness for everyone in this world. So we must make that make that into a social reality. So the Baptist World Aid, right? Now then here is a quote from Baptist News Global, all right? Baptist News Global. Now, this was quoted in that section where it says, several years ago, a mission team, so it's a missionary work, mission team of laypersons preached the morning sermon at First Baptist Church of Abilene, Texas. Now, please note, it is lay people going out, preaching, all right? Preaching in churches, lay people. And then they say they had just returned from completing medical and construction projects at a small Christian hospital in the mountains near Chihuahua, Mexico. Right? So lay people doing medical work, doing construction work, preaching as well in churches. Now the stories of building much needed medicine cabinets and relationships, repairing clinic doors and broken bodies and salvaging discarded equipment and forgotten lives touched our affluent congregation profoundly. In one testimony, a family physician summarized how he viewed their missionary efforts in a needy setting. Some will chat, some will call what we did social gospel. I just call it obedience. Right? So they went to these places, repaired buildings, preachers' churches, and brought medical help and so on. Then when they return and say, some of you say, well, this is social work. We went there to do social work. Focus on repairing buildings and giving medical aid. Well, we just call it obedience. All right? So this group of people in the church began to say, why is our church not involved in this? We are disobedient. Now look at the red highlighted part that I put in there. I contend that the true gospel is social. So the true gospel, they say the biblical gospel, is one that is focused on, engaged in social work. All right? And they say it has a personal aspect, of course. Yet the implications of the true gospel are social. Yes, there's a personal part, well, personal holiness, personal obedience to God. But the true social gospel must be together, included with the social work. All right? Now that is why it will become, we dream of a world where poverty has ended and all people will enjoy the fullness of the life God intends. The work in the world, the social environment, all right, must be brought to a wonderful state. That is the true gospel. That is our duty. That is our obedience if we talk about the true gospel. All right? So that is what it is today in Christianity. Now the early church. Now the question is this. What is the Christians' engagement in social work. What was it like? Is it true that we should be like them? All right? Should we be involved doing that? Now, does the Bible talk about the Christians coming together, doing a lot of so-called social engagement? It does, all right? But let's start and have a clear understanding of what it was about. Now, first start with the early church. Let's read Acts 2, 42 to 45, reading. And they continued steadfastly in the apostles' doctrine and the fellowship, and in breaking of bread, and in prayers. And fear came upon every soul, and many wonders and signs were done by the apostles. And all that believed were together, and had all things common, and sold their possessions and goods, and parted them to all men, as every man had need. Now, were the Christians who got saved by the true gospel, were they engaged socially? Yes, with one another in the church, part of the church community, part of the church's community, all right? Each other's house. Now, when it comes to the social concern, what is the Christian called, all right, to do? You will see in scriptures, the descriptions are generally within the Christian community, not the world, bringing world social help. Now, let's read together. Now, concerning the collection for the saints, as I have given order to the churches of Galatia, even so do ye. Upon the first day of the week, let every one of you lay by him in store as God hath prospered him, that there be no gatherings when I come. And when I come, whomsoever ye shall approve by your letters, them will I send to bring your liberality unto Jerusalem. Now, were they collecting money? Were they raising funds? Yes, but it was specifically for the saints. Did Paul say, now, I give order to the churches for the collection for the social good of society? No. And he's talking about bringing the liberality unto Jerusalem. All right? So he's not talking about unto the world, but the church where there were needs. Were the Christians supposed to be socially concerned? Yes. Yes. Now you say, but isn't that quite selfish? But one thing is clear. The call to the Christian, all right, is definitely to engage in help of others. But you will notice it's always within the Christian community, not to solve social, economic problems, justice problems in society. Now next, let's read together. Moreover, brethren, we do you to wit of the grace of God bestowed on the churches of Macedonia, how that in a great trial of affliction, the abundance of their joy and their deep poverty abounded unto the riches of their liberality. For to their power I bear record, yea, and beyond their power they were willing of themselves, and praying us with much entreaty that we would receive the gift, and take upon us the fellowship of ministering to the saints. And this they did, not as we hoped, but first gave their own selves to the Lord, and unto us by the will of God. Again here, where there was poverty, great trials of affliction. Now the Christian was suffering. Now not only that, it could be also there was some famine, because down here it talks about deep poverty. It looks like it could be a social issue, all right? Now, was the collection for the whole society? No, it was for the fellowship of the ministering to the saints. And it is the grace of God bestowed on the churches, all right? So, the Christian, dear Christian, do not misunderstand that when we talk about the social gospel, social concern, we are saying we have no social concern. But when you see scriptures, when God says there's poverty, there's need, there's collection, there's giving to the saints, it's to the saints. Now perhaps, this is often quoted, well, how can you tell them, oh, just depart, be clothed? Now let's read together. If a brother or a sister be naked and destitute of daily food, And one of you say unto them, depart in peace, be warmed and not filled. Notwithstanding, ye give them not those things which are needful to the body. What does it profit? Now here is the test of salvation. Through salvation, you will always have a love for the brethren. And you will not see a brethren who is poor, destitute of food, requiring clothing, and say, well, go away and be filled. James said then you have to check your salvation. You have no love for the brethren. Now, this is not a verse to say, well, how can you say people, when you see people who are poor on the streets, then you just tell them, well, just give them the gospel and say, well, I hope you get saved. No, you must feed them. You must organize. You must activate, all right, collection and do all this for society. But please note, James is very specific. If a brother or a sister, again, about the saints, there is no mention that if you do not go out and do social work to the rest of the world, then you better check your salvation. No, that was not the point. But I think a very strong point about we must have a social concern. We must be concerned about one another. But it is always, all right, God's concern is first and foremost the church, the Christian. Now let's read. Well, it's a bit long. Perhaps we shall read from verse 9, all right? Verse 9. And let us not be weary in well-doing, for in due season we shall reap, if we faint not. As we have therefore opportunity, let us do good unto all men, especially unto them who are of the household of faith. Right? Now, here God says, we are to do good. We are to sow, right? To help physically to others. Yes, to all men. The Christian is not saying, well, you only do it for Christians and you ignore others. Yes, you come across, you can help, you help. But please note this. God is very, very specifically, when it comes to this social concern, it is especially unto them who are of the household of faith, the saints. Now, this word especially in Greek, the definition is chiefly. This is your chief concern. Who are your chief concern? Most of all, and above all, priority, most important, all right? First to come to mind, the most important, above all. So when it comes to the social concern of the Christian, the Bible, you cannot say God gives us command to have this. Make collections, look at the poverty of the people, right, of the world, and go out into the world and build social organizations to feed the poor. No, all right? The Bible does expect us to watch, to be careful, to take note of the household of faith. Right? So when it comes to the social concern, we have to be clear that is what it is, not to say that you must go to the world. If not, you better check your salvation. That is not the case. Now, perhaps you ask, now, weren't there many instances where Christ did good works, healed the sick, and fed the hungry out of compassion, right? So the organization is called compassion, right? We call ourselves compassion because Christ was compassionate. So Christians must be compassionate. We must be so compassionate. We want to see the world rid of poverty, injustices, and everyone enjoying a wonderful life on earth, right? Compassion, because Christ was compassionate. So you know these verses, right? And Jesus went forth and saw a great multitude, and he was moved with compassion toward them. Say, well, Jesus was moved with compassion. Now, look, Jesus healed their sick, all right? And then in Matthew 15, well, a great multitude came to him, right? And what did Jesus do? There were those who were lame, blind, dumb, maimed, and others. And they cast themselves at Jesus' feet and he healed them. All right? And they healed them. And then they marveled, they wondered. All right? In verse 31, the dumb began to speak. The maimed became whole. The lame to walk. The blind to see. All right? Now here, you see, Jesus have compassion. And the Bible says, and then Jesus called his disciples unto them and said, I have compassion on the multitude. All right? And then because they have not been eating, well, he also fed them. Now, Then Matthew 20, Jesus had compassion on them, touched their eyes, and immediately the eyes received sight. And Jesus, in Mark chapter 1, Jesus moved with compassion, put forth his hand, touched, and said unto him, I will be thou clean, all right? So, impossible to be healed, but cleansed, all right? And again, Mark 8:2, I have compassion on the multitude, because they have now been with me 3 days and I have nothing to eat. Now, with all this, you say, but Jesus had compassion. And these are multitudes. They were unbelievers there. Jesus did these things, healing, feeding, helping. Jesus had compassion. So shouldn't the Christian follow Jesus' example and also continue to do Jesus' work of compassion on earth to the multitudes, right? To the multitudes. Now, what is your answer? What is your answer? Maybe, we should be especially chiefly kind to the household of faith, but follow Jesus' example. Have compassion and go out and heal, right? Study, be a doctor or physio, chiro, whatever, and go and heal and have compassion, right? Work hard, have money, go and feed them, feed the thousands, the multitudes. So how are you going to answer that? Well, maybe try Jonathan. Welcome back. Christ's focus was spiritual, but Christ did heal them physically. They say, physical, seeing, walking, and healed of leprosy, for example, to show that he is God. All right? Please remember, his concern, though he did something physical, all right, as rightly pointed out, was a spiritual concern. How do we know that? Because Scriptures reveals to us the reason why Christ did these physical things. Let's read together. Jesus saith unto him, Thomas, because thou hast seen me, thou hast believed. Blessed are they that have not seen and yet have believed. And many other signs truly did Jesus in the presence of his disciples, which are not written in this book. But these are written, that you might believe that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of God, and that believing you might have life through his name. Now here, God reveals the reason why Jesus did these acts. Now, it is that they might know that he's truly the Christ, the Son of God. Means he is God himself. Because this works, please notice, this works. Look at verse 31, all right? Verse 31. These are not gather food and, raise funds, right? And, maybe heal, right? Do some physiotherapy kind of thing. Give them some medication. No, look at verse 31. They wondered, all right? They understood it was not ordinary social work that was involved. They wondered, verse 31. And when they saw what? The dumb speak. Dumb speaking. This is a miracle, all right? Maimed made whole, lame to walk, blind to see. And they, glorified the God of Israel, all right? So this was not social work, compassion or social work. Jesus' compassion was about their soul, to cause them to see, I am God. Believe in me, turn to me for salvation, so that you will be saved eternally. Your soul will be saved eternally. His physical work was out of a compassion for their spiritual need. And he chose things that would show that he is God. Not social work to relieve them. All right? So we must be very clear in our hearts why Christ had compassion, what that compassion was about. Now let's move quickly. All right, so we read this. Now here again, you say, shouldn't Christians follow Christ to do good works? All right? Well, I think we've said, Christ himself said, labor not. So when they ate the food, we covered this last week, they ate the food, and the food was provided miraculously. All right? Christ chose to perform a miracle so that they know that he is God. Then he says, labor not for the meat which perisheth, but for the meat which endureth unto everlasting life. Christ did not tell his disciples, all right? Christ did not tell the people, the unbelievers, to go and labor for meat which perisheth. Don't be your concern, don't let it be about things that are physical. Not that they are not important, they are not necessary. But your greatest need, all right, as believers, labor, all right, for the meat which endureth unto everlasting life. What will contribute to your eternity? For unbelievers, what will contribute to your salvation for eternity? All right? So that is what we are to labor for. Not to labor to create a world without poverty. Now I want you to understand, verse 27, the fact that God says, labor not for meat which perisheth. God knows that there will be poverty. God knows that there will be social problems and that man has to labor for that. God did not say, well, I know that there will be poverty, there will be social problems, so go labor and solve world food issues. No, he says, labor for the meat which endureth unto everlasting life. Christ knew social problems will be present because of sin. It's not going to get better. He keeps warning his disciples, the social problems, the political problems are not going to get better. It's only going to get worse. But here, because of the social concern and the misinterpretation of things, or rather the desire to misinterpret things, they say, we must go and solve all this problem and take away social problems. When God says it will increase. All right? So, now this is mainly to make sure you understand. And I do give you another verse to confirm it. Let's read together. Ye men of Israel, hear these words. Jesus of Nazareth, a man approved of God among you by miracles and wonders and signs, which God did by him in the midst of you, as ye yourselves also know. So all these works were not social concern, works of social concern. They were works of miracles and wonders that they may know this is the Christ, the man approved of God, the Christ himself, sent of the Father. So now we see the Christians and Christian organizations and Christian denominations focus on the desire to resolve social issues because they say Christ was compassionate. Is not the right understanding of why Christ did this work. It was not to persuade us to go forth and do social work. All right? Now, then we have, Now, then we come to, now, I'm going to mention Martin Luther King Jr. again. For a reason. You just remember this reason because we're going to talk about this later on. Now, King was greatly influenced during his doctoral studies at Boston University by a particular theology in Boston University. Remember Boston University, all right? And his particular theology called personalism. Personalism, all right? Now, we saw Martin Luther King Jr. last week. He was greatly, all right, moved by the social problems, inequality, racial problems, and he stood up and said the Christian must act on these things. And he began to have this kind of desire, mainly because of this idea of this theology called personalism. Now, and we won't see, all right, but look at the third point. King's demand that black people be treated with dignity with ethical implication is the implication of his theology. Because one of the things about this personalism is all men have infinite dignity. All right? So with that idea, then he says that then all must enjoy social, all right, equality and so on. Now, so his dream is to create a community that is about we conscious. All right? Now, when I say community is believers and unbelievers. Okay? Working people, poor people, rich people, black people. Now, the love that King preached, when he preached about love, he is talking about, well, this is actually how Martin Luther King's Jr. faith drove his activism. Overflowing love which seeks nothing in return. Now, this overflowing is talking about, the context is overflowing to all the world, unbelievers alike, the whole social realm, all kingdoms of the earth. All right? That is what he's thinking about, community, we conscious. Now, And then again, it's about reconciling humanity. All right? And look at the second point. The purpose was to bring to pass a world in which unjust hierarchies had no place. Social justice. Now, maybe I'll ask you, is Jesus's main concern when he was on earth, up to the point before he left the earth, and when he left the earth, his aim, is it one of this earth? We must make sure that, well, this whole idea that the Baptist aid, the compassion, this kind of Christian environment, Christian companies and all that, organization, and Martin Luther King's vision and all that, is that Jesus' concern? And is that Jesus' mandate to the Christian, Vincent? Then what is it? They are so convinced, you know. Salvation of souls. Is this kingdom now? All right? Now, let's read together. Jesus answered, "My kingdom is not of this world. If my kingdom were of this world, then would my servants fight, that I should not be delivered to the Jews. But now is my kingdom not from hence." Not from hence. See, Jesus is very clear. If social activism, to make sure that there is no injustices, unjust hierarchies, he was going through the most unjust hierarchy, from religious to political. Did he seek to remove it? No. He said, well, if it's my kingdom, if your idea of my kingdom is here and now, we know it is not, then my disciples will fight. He's saying, why are you fighting? No, I told them not to fight. Put away your sword. This now is not my kingdom, is not now. It's not from here. All right? Of course, the whole world is Christ's kingdom. But removing of all the social injustices, the solving of all the social problems of poverty, inequalities and so on, racial problems, not now, the millennium. It is in the millennium. But for now, this is the time where we focus on the gospel. All right? So I hope that this becomes very clear. Some of you, you may be aware of that already, but this is the Christian realm. All right? Now, how did the social gospel start? This whole idea. Why did it become so strong? All right? Now, don't read everything I did. I'm sorry about the very wordy slides. Now, but in the 19th century, because of immediately following the Civil War, now things were very bad in society. Now, because of that, some became very rich and some remained very poor. There was great inequality. Now, and then at that time, people began to feel that, well, we must use the gospel. Christians must be compassionate. They look at people suffering. So we say we must be compassionate to the world, to the society, solve all these problems. So these problems were very prominent at that time. So movement leaders took Jesus' message, love thy neighbor, into pulpits. We answered that question last week. So they took the parable of the Good Samaritan, all right? And then they used that to say, Christians must be involved. Exactly what Martin Luther King Jr. said. What are all these white pastors doing? They're not doing anything. Right? So now they take that parable and say, we must act. Other leaders, mostly women, now rent settlement houses designed to alleviate sufferings of immigrants living in cities like Boston, in New York City and Chicago. Their mission was to draw attention to the problems of poverty and inequality, especially in America's growing cities. So now they begin to set up settlement houses, help the poor, help those immigrants, help them to have education, help them to have places to live in, to have food and all that. Now, then it began to spread also to Europe. Liberal Christian theologians influence this person, Kaiser Wilhelm, to adopt social programs that laid foundations for modern social welfare. So they did many things, all right? Social work involved. Even the reformers inspired by the social gospel also opened settlement houses, all right, to help education, help daycare, healthcare, and all that. So do you see it became full-blown because of the situation in society. Now the question to ask, when society has problems, does it mean that the Christian then say, well, it's the Christian's duty to now be involved in that? We have to look at scriptures. What is the concern of the Christian? What's the concern of Christ will be the concern of the Christian. My kingdom is not from hence. All right? Now is not the time where the Christian is supposed to ensure equality, social justice, and so on. Not now. Just because society has that. And Christ said it will get worse. We don't go against Christ's objectives for now. We don't go against what Christ says will happen. Christ said it get worse. We say, no, we must solve it. So we must be clear. Now, a diagram to help you understand. The Christian is called to the green bubble now. Christ made it very clear. What is his kingdom about now? The spiritual concern for souls. The gospel, that man will know that he is God and turn to him as sinners for salvation in confession. The gospel. But Christians, churches, seeing the social problems, began to say, no, it's the gospel plus the social aspect, the social active engagements. That is the true gospel, not the green one. The green one just focusing on the spiritual needs, turning them to God to be saved. That is not the true gospel. The gospel is gospel plus spiritual plus social. Then over time, well, there's some groups that are more focused on the social than the gospel. So some say, well, we go forth and preach the gospel. At the same time, we do social work. We have to. Without the social work, it's not the true gospel. But there are groups that even are more focused on the social than the gospel. Don't talk so much about all these spiritual needs. Our main concern is solve social problems, social welfare, take care of their poverty, take care of their inequalities and so on. That is our main concern. Yes, of course, talk about the gospel along the way. But the main concern is social. Now then, of course, there is the full-blown social gospel that is mainly focused on the welfare, the physical welfare of men. All right? So you see these shades. You must be able to identify the shades and stay on the green one, and don't get distracted. All right? Now, I want to show you another diagram to help you follow the entire night's message. We just covered the first extreme left, purple column, social work focus, the social work focus group of Christian. Then I will cover next, in a minute, the social holiness of the Wesleyanism, all right, in the Methodist movement, then the medical missions. Now, but what I want to say, look at the extreme left. Service motivation, the motivation for social care, or the uncalled for focus. God did not call us to do those things. The people started to do those things, all right, and focus on those things. Social concern, uncalled for by God. Now, plus erroneous theology. Now, that is how it will end up in the full-fledged gospel. All right, you understand this diagram? So you take social focus, we just talked about. You add it with liberal social theology, which we will see soon. It will lead to the full-fledged gospel. And in the Methodist movement, you will see innocently a concern for social issues, an innocent concern, but uncalled for, together with liberal social theology, which I will show you what it is, led to the full-fledged social gospel in the Methodism today. And likewise, in the medical missions area. We'll talk about it when the time comes, all right? Now, this liberal social theology. Now, one of it just now I mentioned is the Boston University's what? Let's try. Are you paying attention? Alex. Starts with P. Jemima. Personalism. I keep telling you, please note this because it's going to come up again. One of the theology is this personalism, all right? We shall see what it is soon. And liberal social theology. Now, the idea is this. The liberals, all right, have the idea that, well, Jesus is not God. Jesus is just a wonderful example of what a man should be in terms of his social concern. He was really a hero of the poor, a liberator of the underdogs, all right? So Jesus was really a social activist. And all the miracles that Jesus performed, remember I said the liberals, and one of the things is they do not believe in miracles of the Bible. They say they are just fables, all right? The liberals. Now, listen and try and follow. The liberals had those theology. Jesus is not God. This whole gospel thing is all about do good to men, and good will always emerge victorious. There's no such thing as resurrection. It's just story of victory. Miracles are just to tell you a story, all right? Now, because of that, then the denominations or those who want the social gospel suddenly finds it very attractive to latch on to this liberal theology. Why do you think so? Maybe I ask Ryan. Why do you think the Christians that want to push forward the agenda of the social gospel, be concerned about society, right? Be liberator of the poor and of the underprivileged, trodden under, right? Why does this liberal theology appeal to them so much? For the Christians who want to promote the social gospel, why do you think liberal theology is so attractive to them? Very good. All right. The liberal theology Jesus is about a man that is trying to improve society, trying to turn society around to be better, to be more just, and so on. A Jesus that is like that will help the cause of those who want to promote the social gospel. Be like Jesus. Be like the liberal theologians Jesus. So they latch on to that. So please don't think that the liberal theology is just, well, as long as we avoid it. It's very attractive. When many pastors stood up and said, no, please do not mix the gospel with the social gospel. Do not mix it up. Many of the Christians could not reply and say, well, you show me all these verses that I've showed you. I can't argue against that. But suddenly now there is a theology that supports their desire to be engaged in social activation, or social activism. Suddenly, it is very attractive. So you see the problems, all right? Now, let's come to the next one. Now we talk about, so we saw the Christian realm, Christian organization, denomination, why they are wrong. That is not Jesus' aim and Jesus' concern now, right? So we saw the verses. Now we see Methodism and social holiness. I want you to note how they went wrong, all right? Look at here. Now, the social work focus, this idea, social activism, this idea of the personalism, where all men have infinite humanity, and we must create a better environment, a world of equality, this personalism, all right? These people took on this erroneous theology and became full-fledged social gospel people. Now, I want you to see how Methodism went through a similar process. And I pray, and you ensure that BPism never follows this denomination's error. Are you paying attention? I hope you do. I say that again. I hope in understanding you never, ever yourself propound such ideas, do such things, well, whether it's the medical missions or social holiness, ever take the BP movement down the road that Methodism, Baptist movement ended up in. Because I see and I fear that, and I obviously know that Satan will not spare us from this. Think of all the denominations, they're all in this already, except the BP movement and some other that I don't know about. And that is the main reason why I'm covering this. Now, Methodism. Now, for John Wesley, now he has a theology called social holiness. But it's simply about, now it did not mean social justice, all right? Social holiness begins with in the Christian community. You say, hey, that's correct, right? So he had the right idea within the Christian community that is scriptural. But then he says, and therefore has everything to do with the internal life of the church. But happened next is this. The fellowship of believers is the place where social holiness is cultivated and exercised, but it also spills over to the boundaries of the church and reaches out to those who are outside the fellowship. Now, here is a study of John Wesley's idea of what is social holiness. He said the Christian must be holy, yes. And within the Christian community, now we must do what we read in Acts and so on. But he said, now all this must spill over outside the church to also the world. So while he says it should be this, but he said it must spill over. Now the other difference with John Wesley is this. Organizations developed by Wesley emphasize the role of individual members. He's not talking about go out, form organizations like Compassion and all that, and then raise funds. And no, he said as individuals, we must be loving within and you must be loving outside as well, right? Be like that outside the church to unbelievers. Appeal to people, either individual as or members of groups. So he appealed. Now, I'm not asking you to go and set up Compassion. I'm not asking you to go set up all these groups. But you are rich, right? As a group, right? Why don't you do something for the poor, right? In the world. Now, he did not urge structural changes in society, did not urge passage of specific legislation. So he saw, well, like, the ideas of what Martin Luther King Jr. and all, that kind of people, that kind of idea. No, he's against it. We are not social activists. We just quietly do social work, all right? So now that is his personal philosophy, and he urged others to be like that. Now, while he was strong advocate for the poor, he refused to align himself with many of these political reformers of the day. So that was the difference about him. So we said, well, at least he's good. Right? That sounds good. How did it end up today, where Methodist movement is one of the most prominent social gospel proponents? We shall show you why afterwards. Now, in general, Wesley relied on efforts of individuals and as organized in societies and on the art of persuasion. All right. Now, he formed a holy club, and it's a support group to pursue holy living. But it's not merely about private piety, but public acts of charity and service. So this holy club, you would think that is about how we encourage one another to be obedient to God, to be holy. No, it includes, holiness must include social aspect, which is public acts of charity and service. So it began to be something that he pushed. All right. Now his heart concept. Some quotes which maybe you're familiar: earn all you can, save all you can, and give all you can. Now, from what he received, he put aside 28 pounds for his personal use, giving the rest to the support of church and the poor. At the age of 80, he was begging on the streets in Bath, in England, not taking a bath. For himself, not for himself, but for the poor, all right? He kept giving already, and he went on begging. He said, you must have social holiness. Part of holiness is to be socially holy as well, to help the poor. So that is the Wesleyan thinking, John Wesley's thinking. Build schools to give the children from poor families a place to study, to prepare themselves for better employment, visiting prisoners and so on. So he did many of these things, also building schools, also for the public, social work. But he would not be a social activist. Now, maybe at this point we ask the question, doesn't God expect us to minister to others' bodies as well as not just spiritual, right? God says things which are needful for the body, faith without works is dead. Now, how do you answer that? Well, we know, again, the context is brother or sister, be naked or destitute. God was not talking about going outside the church and make sure that you build schools, you beg for the poor and give to the poor and all that. No, God was specifically talking about the expectation, how we treat one another, all right? How we treat one another. And he even says, all right, that if we love one another, the world will see and they will know that we are truly disciples of Christ, all right? Now, and of course, I show you the verse, especially of them that own a household. So to answer this question, yes, we are to be concerned, but not like John Wesley's idea of social holiness, that you must raise money for the poor. You must go and do all these things. If you don't, you cannot call yourself a holy Christian. Now, that is a big difference, right? But God says Otherwise, the concern is always spiritual, and it begins especially for the own household. Chiefly, all right, chiefly. Now, the social concerns, the social gospel in America. Now, there is this man called Walter Rauschenbusch. Now, next week we're going to cover him. He is a big name, all right? I won't ask you to remember his name, at least remember Walter, all right? Walter Rauschenbusch, all right? So he's a big name in the social gospel realm. Now, he confidently predicted that American Methodists would play a key role in disseminating the social gospel in the United States. He was right. Methodist led American Protestantism in adopting a denominational social creed that was largely incorporated by the Federal Council of Churches at its founding in 1908. Now, it began with the idea of John Wesley, social holiness. You must do social work in order to be considered properly holy. With that, Walter Rauschenbusch, all right, began to say, with this kind of thinking, with this kind of direction, with this kind of concept in the founder's heart, he knows that the Methodist movement is well positioned with its large congregation, with its desire to be holy, all right? And if you tell me holiness includes social work, with that kind of desire, now he felt very strongly that this would be really the denomination that will propel social gospel far and wide. He was right. He was right. I come back to this. Actually, I have the slide. Now, developments following the American Civil War presented challenges to Methodist theologians, right? Changing attitudes towards the Bible and new philosophical ideas, racism, social injustice, all these problems began to be in society, and the Methodists began to see all that. Now, formal Methodist theology took a decided turn. What is this decided turn? In the late 19th century, Methodist theology reflected three significant shifts. Now there are significant shifts in Methodism. Movements from the other worldliness to this worldliness. Remember Martin Luther King kind of idea? You Christians who just talk about saving souls, you live in another world. We need to live in this real world. Now, more and more, they move from gospel to social, this world. Passivity to activity. No more just, well, I persuade you, well, if you want to do it, good, if you don't. Now it's active. We must do it as a denomination, activism. Ethical practices from symptomatic relief to systematic reform. So no more like, well, we come across, then we help. Symptomatic relief. Now we must systematically have processes, have organizations, have all sorts of programs to ensure that we reform society. All right? So now it shifts from the founder's attitude towards things, who now the founder himself had some errors. Now it shifts to a very far side. Now, I show you this diagram again, because this diagram is to help you to see the picture, all right? And always remember, are we in this picture? Now, look at the middle bar, social holiness. That was Wesley's error, all right? You must do social work in order to be holy. No. Well, you fail in your duties towards your brethren. Yes, you can say that you are not fulfilling God's commandments. But God did not command us to fulfill social responsibilities to relieve the world of its poverty and injustices. God did not command that. But God did command us to ensure that we care and love one another and provide help for one another when genuinely needed. God did command that. Social holiness has no place in scriptures. But because he took that on, all right, he took that on. Now the denomination is at danger. Now, if you have that attitude, be careful, because you will take things to the next stream. Now, a stream of liberal or modernist Methodist theologians emerged. Now, within the Methodist movement, liberals came up, modernists came up. You know what they are, right? I defined them for you. Many of them, they do not believe Christ is God. They do not believe the Bible is true. They do not believe that the miracles are true. Resurrection is false. All this kind of thing. Now, within the mainstream of Methodist movement, liberal theologians grew. And guess what? What theology do you think they imbibed? Try again, Alex. No. Personalism, right? All right, personalism. Now, a form of classic theologian, all right, so this is the research done on the Methodist movement and their theology changes. A form of classic theological liberalism known as Boston personalism emerged at Boston University of Theology, and okay, let me put, what is personalism here? Among many things, I try to simplify for you, infinite worth and dignity of every human being, not just Christian, everyone, all right? So they say, this is an inherent thing. Now, therefore, everyone must be liberated to have equality. And also a moral world order. In personalism, the belief that moral world order is necessary. It is a must, all right? No, not millennium, now is a must. So this personalism theology became popular. Now, guess what? Maybe I just skip. Now, look at the last point, all right? Now, I mentioned the first one actually. It resonated. This personalism resonated now within the Methodist theologians, and they love it because they want to push the social gospel. The second point. Now, Methodist social gospelers sought to apply the principles of Jesus' ministry and transformation of society to establish a new social order. All right? Now, they began to include all this kind of Bostonian personalism in their official creed, because in 1908, Methodist Episcopal Church produced a social creed. Now it's no more, I persuade you, now it's a mandate. This is the Methodist beliefs. The Bostonian personalism concepts now is our official belief. Give an official sanction to ideas, all right, inherent in all these things, all right? So now it is increasing its awareness to social and global consciousness. This is expected. Now, I want you to, in fact, see where they are today. All right? I'm not going to click this. I think it's all going to go haywire. So I cut and paste. So imagine I just click this, right? I just click this link. Now, this is the United Methodists, and you see their standard official logo there. People of the United Methodist Church. All right? Now, and what I'm going to show you is adopted by the General Conference of Charlotte 2024, just last year. This is their beliefs today, Methodist movement today. So if I click that, it comes here. All right, preface, social principles. This is what they talk about. All right, preamble, we affirm our unity in Christ. Now, and is it apply our faith in different cultural contexts? Now, but one of the things that they speak about is the issues in contemporary world. They say the contemporary world, the Christian must be engaged and concerned about the contemporary world. Now, one of it, community of all creation. All creation is the Lord's. Save the earth. So all the social activism on the green movement, we must be engaged. Social community, so it's as United Methodists, all humans being made for God and for one another. Right? So in here, some of the Bostonian personalism ideas are there. Political community. We support structures in the church and in civil society to honor basic reform, basic freedoms and rights of all human beings. Now they begin to say, part of the United Methodist movement, the Methodists, what do we stand for today? To fight for the honor and basic freedom and rights of all human beings and protect God's creation. So this is their belief today. They openly state it. Our social creed, reflecting our social principles, all right? So you go in there, you will see more and more things. Ecosystem, global warming, environmental racism, food justice, caring for all creatures, protecting space, and so on and so on. So this is the full-blown social gospel. I want you then, well, pictures. Mission and ministry, seek to live lovingly, justly, all right? Caring for others, working out social structures, social issues, God's children everywhere, all right? Those that are aging, sick, and imprisoned. We must get engaged in all these social issues and help, advocating for justice, fight for justice, all right? Promoting health and wholeness, preventative health practices, medical, and working to eradicate diseases. Right? So these are the social principles of the Methodist Church today. Now, what I want to show you is this. It's back to this diagram. The center one, just like the first bar, a concern for social focus, which is uncalled for, added with erroneous liberal theology, you get the full social gospel. The middle bar, Methodism, same thing. The founder himself had an error, uncalled for. God did not call for the Christian to say, if you don't go and solve social issues, you are not holy then. God did not call for that. But he interpreted scriptures as, no, we must have that. Now, and then it came later on, the people in the movement, when the theologians becomes liberal, they took in the Boston personalism theology, added it to the founders' thinking. What happens? Full-fledged social gospel. Full-fledged today, as I showed you. Full-fledged, all right? Now, then we come to the third group, all right? The third group. Actually, I didn't need to speak so fast, all right? I'm kind of all right with time. I think maybe not. Famous last words, all right? Now we come to the third bar, right? The third bar, which is medical missions. Medical missions, all right? So, now you hear of names like Hudson Taylor, David Livingstone, and so on, right? So some of the young people, you read their biographies and you're very excited and all that. Now let's understand some things, all right? Yeah. So you see how full-blown the Methodist movement today, one of the leading, all right, arm of the social gospel. Now we move to missionaries. Missionaries. Now, medical missions in the world, right? A medical mission is a trip. Now, I'm taking this from the National Library of Medicine, National Center for Biotech, making medical missions your mission, all right? PMC. Many of the things I took for our Adelphos Bible study on mental health. PMC, reputable medical organization A medical mission is a medical trip, typically run by non-governmental organization to provide short or long-term medical care in a developing country. All right, few things. Developing country, go there, provide short or long-term medical help, medical care, not typically supported by the government. It may be done by one. So if you're a doctor, by one or more individuals, medical providers, or by a whole team with a single mission. Example, providing surgery for specific condition. Now, it may involve a variety of medical and non-medical personnel as well. So now what is a definition of a medical mission? Medical mission, right? So if, say, Dr. Colin say, well, I'm going on a medical mission, all right, based on what it should be. This is what it would mean, all right? An individual or with a group of people going out together, deciding that on our own, let's go, all right? Or maybe we form a small group, let's go to a third world country. And, in this country, they need medical care and all that. They can't get it easily. Or maybe certain specific condition that I am able to handle. I will go there and provide that medical care, all right, to that village. Remember, these are non-believers. To the village, to the society there. So this is what is a proper definition, all right, of medical missions. Medical missions. Now, but at this point, I want to make some definitions to make sure that we use these words clearly, all right? Medical missions. But do not forget, by PMC's definition, it can be an individual, one or more individual, all right, medical provider. So if you are in a medical field, you must know that what I'm going to show you next soon, all right, is a very popular idea today among Christians, doctors. So if you're in a medical line, you're a nurse or physiotherapist or whatever, your approach, all right, because it includes variety of medical and non-medical personnel. Even non-medical say, you want to come with us on a medical mission trip? We say, well, anything the word mission means, good, right? Let's go, right? Now, but let's define some terms. Now, what is a mission? First, what is a mission? Now, a mission, by definition, is an important job, especially a military one. We are on a mission for the country, right? That someone is sent to do something. So you're on a mission. You are on a mission. But let's not just mix that up and say mission. Now, what is a missionary? A missionary, by definition, is a person who has been sent to a foreign country to teach their religion. Missionary means involves religion to the people who live there. Right? So you may be on a medical mission. You are there to heal people, to patch up people, that kind of thing, to provide care. Well, you're on a medical mission. But a medical missionary, maybe I ask whether you're paying attention. JB, what is a medical missionary? Someone who goes to a country to provide. Right, look at the definition carefully, all right? Try another person. Hazel. Say again. To teach them your religion. All right? So remember, you can say, I'm on a medical mission. But please don't say, I'm a medical missionary. A medical missionary is someone who teaches their religion. All right? Now, please do not use these terms lightly and be confused. Because you may end up saying, I'm this missionary and that missionary. And I said before, I've met Christians who say, well, I'm in Perth. I'm a missionary. I say, whoa, which Bible college do you study at? Oh, no, I'm a missionary. So what do you mean? They keep saying, I'm a missionary. Oh, I'm an engineer here, but I live in another country. Because I live in another country and I have a profession here and I share the gospel and I'm part of a church, I'm a missionary. Missionary is someone who's there to teach the religion, all right? To do religious work. You are just someone who's trained as an engineer or a teacher living in Perth. That is all. You're a Christian. And every Christian living in every country is supposed, right, to be a light. But you are not sent. Please look at missionary, a person who has been sent by a church, by an organization, sent to a foreign country to teach religion. Please don't say, I'm a Singaporean, but I'm in Perth as a pharmacist, as a physiotherapist, as a chiro. Well, I'm a missionary here. Don't say that, right? Be clear. Are you sent? Which church sent you? Right? Which Bible college sent you? Which denomination sent you? Right? So don't use these words lightly. Christian medical mission. So I name you one. For example, the doctors who are present in our midst. Have you come across those who are medical profession? Have you come across medical missions? It's a Christian medical mission organization. A Christian missionary endeavors to involve the administration of any kind of medical treatment. They say, we are going there. Notice they use the word missions. They go there to do medical work. All right? Any kind of medical work. Now then we have again this idea of medical missions. Then you have the wrong theology and you end up in full-fledged social gospel. All right? Now, first and foremost, you notice that there are Christians who set up Christian medical organizations to do Christian mission work. I say again, Christians feeling that they must create Christian organizations and engage medical professionals as well as non-medical professionals, as long as you're willing. We must form medical mission companies to go forth and do this kind of social work to the society. Now let me ask you, where did this idea come from? All right? Have you heard of teachers? Have you heard of, let me see, try and use one. Have you heard of teachers' missions, engineers' missions, project managers' missions? You don't see that. But medical missions is in proliferation, many of them. Why? How is it like that? And these medical missions, please know, they are full-blown gospel, a full-blown social gospel. They say we are Christians, we must come together, and we must go to third world country and provide medical care, medical provisions, and all those things. We are Christians, we must do that. That is full-blown social gospel. Christians in full-blown social gospel work. How does it lead there? Well, I think it started with some of these medical missionaries, genuine medical missionaries, going out. People like Hudson Taylor, David Livingstone, they went out. Now, what were on their mind? We have to understand. And what is on the mind of today's medical missionaries? All right, some even model after these people. What led to full-blown, the red color, full-blown social work? Nothing. You look at all this, all right? You look at all this. Nothing to do with Christianity. But because we are Christians, we must do social work. How does it end up in this full-blown social gospel condition? All right, now, I'm not saying that David Livingstone and Hudson Taylor, they created the full-blown medical missions social gospel. I'm not saying that for a moment. But what I'm telling you is this, and listen carefully. What they do and what they did wrong and how we want to interpret and take those ideas today can, I say again, can, in fact, highly potentially, possibly will cause the denomination, whether it's BP movement, whether whatever movement you're in, can easily bring that to a full-blown social gospel. All right? How, you ask? How? Let's run through their lives. Now, first, let's look at the history of medical missions. All right, so there was this thing called medical missions. Now, healthcare missions. Now, it began with Peter Parker, an American physician in 1834, so 1800s, all right? Now, he was the first modern-day full-time medical missionary to China. So you want to know about medical missionary, this is the man, not Hudson Taylor, all right? Now, one of the very few foreigners to get involved, get invited inland, deep into China. Foreigners were not allowed to mingle with the Chinese people at the time, right? Western medicine provided a way for Parker to gain access to parts of Chinese society that were otherwise closed off to missionaries. Means people who really want to bring the gospel, to teach the religion, closed off, no way to get in. But they found that with that, because China needed help, they were invited in. Now, that is a medical missionary, the first one, as far as people can tell. Right? In 1838, the world's first Society for Medical Missions was founded, Medical Missionary Society of China. In 1901, China was the most popular destination for medical missionaries. So people who wanted to go in to share the gospel, all right, found that a pathway was created. So some of them intentionally study medicine because they want to go in and preach the gospel. And they found that this is the only way to get in there, all right? So, and the destination that was most popular in the world was China, all right? Now, then we have Hudson Taylor. Now, Hudson Taylor, before founding the China Inland Mission Group. So you know, those of you who go to Singapore, you know OMF, Overseas Mission Fund, all right, or Foundation, OMF. Now it's in Singapore, right? So it was originally CIM, China Inland Missionary, founded by Hudson Taylor, all right? Now, he studied medicine as a way to minister to the lost and hurting in China. He understood Jesus' call to show compassion to the sick and provide help for the hopeless, all right? So as OMF continues to follow Hudson Taylor's example, healthcare workers are bearing amazing fruit for the kingdom. So this is what they quote, OMF Australia, right? So he said, you see, we follow Hudson Taylor's idea, and wonderful things are happening. They go in there, do medical work, all right? Now, is it really Hudson Taylor's idea? Now, should Hudson Taylor and David Livingstone, being doctors in China and Africa, respectively, be examples for people to be missionary doctors today, right? Should they? So very often people read their autobiographies, they say, I want to be a doctor because I want to be like them. I want to go to China, I want to go to Africa, I want to go to a third world country and be a to be a missionary doctor there, right? Now, in fact, like David Livingstone, which we'll talk about after. Now, all this kind of work, you will notice, it became a fad. It became a very popular thing. Those who say, well, I want to live for Christ. I want to do work for Christ. It became a popular fad. Look at these men. They go to the worst places, the most difficult places. I want to give my life to do that. So it became very popular, and especially in the medical realm, because that was what it started off with. Maybe if it started off with the teachers, then today maybe it will be different, right? Teachers, missions, not healthcare missions, right? Maybe something else, if it was engineering or whatever. It's just at that time, China invited doctors, though. Then it became a fad that continued today. People look at them and say, let's do it. Let's just do it, all right? But the question is, should we follow? What were the reasons that they did it for? All right? Now, Hudson Taylor's philosophy of work, I won't take salary, all right? So he was, in a sense, not accountable to any church, any organization. He said, I won't take salary. Well, if you want to be like Hudson Taylor, then you don't take salary, all right? Now, he started work there, but he created non-denominational faith because he was not under anyone's sponsorship and under any organization. He just started whatever, right? So non-denominational faith. What do you believe? Just believe, be safe, that's it. All the doctrines, all the theology, not important. Encourage single women to live in the interior of China. If you're single woman, right? Go deep, go further in, go and be a missionary deep inside to diffuse the gospel as far and wide as possible. Now, in fact, at that time, he came under a lot of attack because people began to say that it's unsafe, right? Why are you exposing these people to that? But he's not trained, he has no idea about missionary. Just go, right? Many of them will get into trouble. And he sent women in, 2 by 2, and they went in. Right? And as a result, the women were the one who planted the churches. The women began to lead the churches. The women began to began to form churches, and so on. Right? So problems began to occur. Is sharing the gospel everything? Right? Now, follow Hudson Taylor as a missionary doctor. China was, no, shouldn't show you that. Now, let me ask you to think now. For today, is it still the same situation for us to follow Hudson Taylor? I want to go into China. I'll be a missionary doctor. I got no time, so I won't ask you, all right? Now, China was not open at that time, as it is now. All right? Now, I'm not saying that you can go in and preach the gospel and so on. Is the gospel not in there? Expatriates who go in there, they can have churches and worship openly with expatriates. China students, I have many China classmates in FEBC, they can come out of China and study in FEBC, called, not just I want to volunteer and be a missionary doctor, missionary this, and go there and teach religion. No, called by God. The government allow them to leave the country, to go to another country to study. They come back with their calling and their theological training to teach in their own language, to teach their own people. Now, all that God has opened all that. Is there a need for medical missionaries? They had to, or rather say, the only way for them to go in there was that. So why are we still saying, I want to be a medical missionary, a missionary doctor, all right? Likewise for Africa, right? They probably have more Bible colleges than many other countries. Why do you say, I need to be a medical doctor, missionary doctor? Are you trained? Now, they went in. So like Hudson Taylor, you read by and large, So, by the way, Hudson Taylor read a book and then he got stirred and he went. So please, right, don't read a book and be stirred and go. Don't someone tell you, you must go, you have this, you should go, and then you just go. It's a calling. Now, Hudson Taylor had an unwavering purpose to evangelize China. He was not going there to be a missionary doctor, to still be a doctor, live like a doctor, have a clinic and all that. No. It was his way to get in there. His main and only aim. Now, unless you say, I want to be a missionary doctor, and what you're saying is, I'm going to a Bible college and study, and I get a medical degree, and that medical degree will enable me to enter in China, which you don't need. And then you go there, you are basically going to put aside your medical degree and mainly focus on teaching the Word of God. You cannot call yourself a medical or missionary doctor, all right? To them, a missionary doctor was, they went there to do missionary work, gospel work, purely that. Mainly that, the doctorate, the medical education they had was to get them in. That is the meaning of a missionary doctor. All right? Don't just say, then you want to be a missionary teacher, missionary engineer, missionary physiotherapist, missionary whatever. Why is there none? Because of this background. China was closed to foreigners, as I mentioned. Being a doctor was the only way to get in. Now, he was not a full-time doctor. All right? Please know that. But in fact, you read his biography, his first and foremost concern was always evangelism, and most of his time was spent on evangelism. If at that time it was a teacher that could get in, then he would be a teacher. All right? So please don't plant this idea in your children. Go and study and be a doctor. Right? Then become a missionary doctor. I said, Dad, what are you talking about? Right? Either I'm a missionary or I'm a doctor. Which one? Right? You want me to go there and be a doctor? Or you want me to go there and be a missionary? Missionary, I have to check whether I'm called to the full-time ministry. Right? Now, having a medical background was to get into China. His aim was not about being a missionary doctor, but being a gospel missionary. The idea today of missionary doctors and forming all this organization, they go there to do predominantly medical work. They openly state that is their mission statement. Right? Missionary doctors today is more about holistic approach, not about gospel missionary. So mainly about a holistic healing of the body and that kind of thing. And yes, you bring in the gospel, but most of them don't even bring in the gospel. It's purely social work. You have a medical skill, you can operate on this kind of eye diseases. Come, join us. Let's go to the deep part of Vietnam or Myanmar, and there's this case there. Shall we go there? Nothing to do with the gospel. We admire, this is my statement, I admire his love for souls, missionary mindedness, but we are not simply winning souls on your own and not proper church and not having proper churches to support you and to ensure their souls are fed. Now, the whole idea is this. You saw the problem. Hudson Taylor read a book, stirred, wanted to be a missionary. More and more doctors, inspired by him, all just went there, all started all sorts of things, non-denominational, no one called. Now, we always say, you want to do something like that, you make sure there is a man called first. There is a preacher, a trained full-time preacher. Wherever the jungle, wherever it is, there is the person. Then you go and do the work. If not, you do all this and lots of chaos. Lots of churches are in all sorts of errors, right? Because I read it, I want to be, and I go there, I start to work. Because Hudson Taylor did it, because David Livingstone did it. They were missionary doctors. No, they were focused, or as Hudson Taylor was focused on missionary gospel work. Now, next. What about David Livingstone? Now, David Livingstone, this is PMC, right? A record. As a preacher, he was poor and he failed to make a single convert, all right? And the only convert he made also had trouble because he can't give up polygamy, all right? And too difficult for him to be a true Christian, right? Sometimes we think David Livingstone, wow, how many souls he saved, but this is what the record was. Now, I'm not saying that just because no one got saved, then it is not God's will. But I want you to know something about David Livingstone, all right? Medical missions records, right? He worked as a medical doctor in South Africa in this time, right? At this time, but eventually he got tired of medical work and doubted its effectiveness as a form of Christian ministry. So he said that actually missionary doctor does not work. He ceased to practice medicine and began his exploration of Africa's interior and fight against slave trade. What actually he's well known, especially in England and so on, was not so much his medical, being a missionary doctor, was his exploration of Africa's interior and fighting against social injustices of the slave trade. Did you know that? Yes. Did he go through a lot as a Christian? Yes. He put himself there, and he went through all this. Now, despite Livingstone's limited practice as a medical missionary, he, like Parker, influenced medical doctors to pursue careers as missionaries. Now, this is a problem. People look to Livingstone, or even the Hudson Taylors, or other missionaries, like Peter, Parker, right? All these people, they inspired doctors to pursue a medical degree to be missionaries. Do you need to pursue a medical degree to be a missionary today? No. Right? And these people, if you really want to do the gospel work, be called. Are you called? If you're called, and that the only way for you to get into certain country, all right, is at that time to be a missionary, to be a doctor, then you go study to help you in there. All right? When you're in there, well, you do the gospel work. Well, there were also many questions about some of the things Livingstone did. He made promises that he'd keep to the government, ran whatever, did whatever he wanted to do, and created so much problems. All right, he became actually a very bad testimony. Now, so please remember, he eventually just said, "Well, I'm just going to focus on charting all these new maps for the government, how to enter this part and that part." Well, it's useful for missionaries. Yes, it was useful for the missionaries. All right? So he was hugely influential for that. And social justice. So please don't look at them and say, "I want to be a medical, missionary doctor like them." Were they really called? Was Livingstone called? I don't think so. Right? He basically disinterested in that over time. If you're truly called, you will persevere. You have an ongoing love. Now, Luke was a physician, but there was no account of Luke as a missionary doctor. Right? He was a physician, and after that, the main records of him was missionary journeys to support Paul's missionary endeavors. No mention of focusing on being a physician, bringing medical, social reforms, changing government way of working in hospitals. That was not his focus anymore. All right? Now, I come to this. So, remember, medical missions with the wrong idea that this is about the way to get into a country and then continue to be a doctor and do some mission work. Livingstone had the idea. Eventually, he just went into full social gospel. All right? Liberate, try to fight against the injustice of slavery, that kind of thing. So, the idea can be very appealing, but it is not found in scriptures at all, and it will eventually cause problems. In scriptures, calling, serve, full-time, being ordained, the Apostle Paul made it very clear. Make sure wherever you go, they're ordained men. They will lead the church. They will care for the church. They will watch over the church. Not you go there and then do whatever you want and start and say, "Well, I saved this soul, I saved that soul." Who's going to feed the soul? Right? You? Now, so let's see how full-blown it is. Today, MMA, Medical Missions Aid Incorporated, Christian organization. Who are they? Sustainable improvement in health of all people in vulnerable communities in developing countries. Christian organization, but it's purely social. Our mission, developing countries, work with local Christians in developing countries to do what? Assist in advancement of effective healthcare. Advancement of the gospel? No. Advancement of effective healthcare. To work with disadvantaged communities. Again, the social concerns. And ensure that all this is achieved through provision. It's about providing medical scholarships, grants, medical supplies, supporting locally led preventive health initiatives. Now, these are Christian organizations that are full-blown, I come back here, full-blown social gospel organizations. How did it go there? Again, it's the ideas of, well, they were missionary doctors, right? So we just continue the idea, have liberal theology, ideas in us. We must save the society, make society better. With all this liberal theology, becomes full-fledged social gospel. Now, our values. Now, by the way, so you have to be clear in your heart. Don't think just is, well, I have this training, I have this background, I'm in the medical field, then I'm the best person, all right, to, well, promote these kind of things and use that to promote solving social problems. Now, next week we'll see how it develops further. I want to emphasize, next week we will see how it will develop further. So these are MMA's values: empower the locals. Now they say it's a biblical mandate of Jesus to care for the marginalized and vulnerable in society, right? Liberal theology comes in. Social theology comes in. So look at the last bullet point, all right? So again, it is equal value of every human being and importance of respecting and honoring each individual, to the point where we must be focused, pour our money, energy just for that. Nothing to do with the gospel, just every human being must be given this kind of benefits, all right? So it is basically personalism in here. Now, next, healthcare missions. Another group, right? Healthcare mission. So again, it is about going out to East Asia, countries that are without modern medicine, through established ministries, connect with physicians. So they say, you're a doctor, you're a nurse, you're a dentist, you're whatever healthcare personnel, all right? You want to be part of our group? All right, we go out on these mission trips. They say, mission trips. I have the training. Yes. Please know this is a full-blown social gospel endeavor, all right? Be clear. Remember the green bubble. You are called to the green bubble. Everyone is called to the green bubble. You're a teacher, you're a medical practitioner, you are an engineer, you are whatever. It's the green bubble, the gospel, and that is all. Wherever you are, dispense the gospel. Unless you're called, then go to a country and be a missionary teaching the religion there. Right? That is all. Don't get this idea of a missionary doctor, because it was a totally different reason why they needed to be missionary doctors. Now, so going into Cambodia and so on. So always these third world countries. So just because you go there and then you have this training and then you start to do some work, then you call yourself missionary doctor. Understand why missionary doctors were needed. Now, if you say, I want to go there, then pray, God, is your will for me to live in Cambodia or in somewhere, some deserted place in Africa? God, is your will for me to go there? And I'm a teacher, I'm an electrical engineer, or I'm a medical professional. God, is your will for me to be there? Then, just like you pray, God, is it your will for me to stay in Perth? Then you stay in Perth. And then God reveals it's His will for you to stay in Perth. And you happen to be a physiotherapist. Do you call yourself a physiotherapist missionary? You don't. All right? Just like you say, you feel that, well, I have a deep desire to be part of a church in Africa, one of the churches that I know. There is a BP church, and I want to contribute. I want to be a member there. I want to serve there. And that's it. You can be a doctor, a teacher, whatever. You're there. That's it. All right? You don't go there and call yourself, I'm a missionary doctor, missionary teacher, missionary this and that, right? Engineer, and so on. You just go there. And for example, we went on a mission trip, right? Then we had physiotherapists happen to be with us in the team. Now, do we publicize ahead? We are coming, and look, there's physiotherapists, all right? And there is teacher, right? There's an electrical engineer. Do we publicize and say, we are coming? Now, if you have any need, tell us. We don't do that. That's not the gospel work. It's just G, not G plus S, not gospel plus social work. We go there, and then when we are there, one of the members said, well, I can't straighten my head for many months now, right? And then the physiotherapist that was with us, now let me see if I can help you, right? Try to render some relief, some aid, right? And that's all, right? That is all. It's just like you're here, you're a physiotherapist in church, in Perth. And then, no different from in church. Someone has some need for some advice about how to fix some electrical problems or medical problems, then you're trained, you just give some advice or help. That's it. After you help solve the person's neck problem, do you go around and say, I'm a missionary physiotherapist now. I found my calling. You don't do that. Right? So if you feel that you're called to be in Africa, to be in Cambodia, just go there, live there just like you live in Perth. Be a Christian who happens to be a doctor, a teacher, that's it. And help the church members if there's a need. Not go around saying, publicize, I'm a missionary teacher. I'm a missionary, I am coming. All right, so all gather up. Wait for me. That is gospel plus social work. Worst of all, there's nothing that is social, then it's really just gospel. Or predominantly social, which is, I'll come and see all whoever, your church friends, your relatives. Come, I'll look at them, I'll give them medicine, I'll cure them and all that. Treat them and all that, then I'm a missionary doctor now. No, right? Oh, you're going to do all that, then you are really crossing into the social plus gospel. All right? And it always leads to the final gospel. And if you begin to propound the idea, and then more and more doctors in the BP churches, more and more teachers, more and more engineers in the BP churches began to think this is what it means. Then they began to join all these organizations which are full-blown social gospel environments, thinking that this is what is good. Then you begin to introduce this slide, not this PowerPoint slide, this slide into the denominations. Please be careful. So parents, please don't give your children that kind of ideas. And doctors, don't give the church that kind of ideas. Now, all right, then we have now why healthcare missions. So another healthcare missions, all right, another group. Modeling the compassion of Christ. This is actually OMF. They say, why do we do this? Modeling the compassion of Christ. And we saw the compassion of Christ was performing miracles that people know that He is God. Not go and provide medical supplies and operate on certain things, all right? So when they say modeling the compassion of Christ, we all get moved and say, oh yeah, we should. Demonstrating the sanctity of every life. Again, the personalism, theology, liberal theology. All right, and so on, all right? Now, partnering with evangelism and discipleship efforts, whatever denomination, whatever beliefs. Biblical separation is what we are called to, all right? Not join these organizations and be part of them. So Christian Medical and Dental Fellowship of Australia. See now? Dentists also, right? You want to start something? Those who are electrical engineers, whatever. Now, so now we have this, to foster interest in the support of cross-cultural medical and dental mission. All right? So they just simply promote and connect our members to medical mission opportunities. So they will approach you if you're in this field. Come on a mission trip with us to encourage short-term and long-term mission work. So you say, oh yeah, I'm a Christian, I have this skill, I'll just go with you, right? Understand they are full-blown social gospel organizations. And don't go around promoting and asking people to do that. Now here we have Christ going around healing all sorts of diseases and all that. It comes back to the same principle. He did those things. The Bible made it very clear to show man that He was indeed the Son of God. All right, unless you go there and perform miracles. Okay. All right. So even people who do research over time began to say missionaries in field became more and more involved in social work. And they often saw this as their authentic life mission. In the process, preaching became secondary. So this is a common trend. And this is a dangerous trend. They call themselves missionaries, but they are not there to do the missionary work. As a result, missionaries commonly receive criticism from fundamentalists for proclaiming a social gospel, a secular humanitarian agenda, which is true, right? They undervalue the primacy of conversion experience. Now, the danger is this. Even unbelievers who does this kind of research, they understand. It is a very dangerous thing to call yourself a missionary doctor and then go there and then they see a missionary teacher or missionary engineer and then they go there and see, they see you mainly doing all this social work for them, with them. The idea, that is what it will be, this is what Christianity is about. God is interested in healing me. God is interested in solving my social problems. And that is all. You see the danger? And the other danger on the church's side, you say, I'm a missionary, this and that. People in church will look to you as someone who is spiritual, expecting you to be a spiritual advisor because you're a missionary, right? The whole point of missionary is teaching the religion's beliefs. So just say, I happen to be a doctor, you need some help, I'll help you. Why must you call yourself a missionary, this and that, right? Okay? Otherwise, they begin to link the errors. They begin to think missionary, religious. They begin to think religious actually mainly to do with the physical. That is the problem. Now, in closing, some Bible principles, all right? Now, God tells us, but as God distributed to every man as the Lord hath called everyone. All of us have our calling. What is our vocation in life? Teacher, engineer, all right, cleaner, whatever it is. We all have our calling, and we are to abide in it. Are you a missionary? Means you are to teach and do the mission, the religious work. Are you a missionary or are you a teacher, a doctor, an engineer? We all have a calling. Don't mix the two and make people feel that this is something, a unique category, right? And that is all. I am a pastor, you are a teacher, we abide in our calling, right? I don't try and call myself anything else, right? I'm a pastor businessman, right? Then I'm a missionary doctor, right? So, you know, it becomes the whole idea of this fad. David Livingston, Peter Parker, David Livingston, Hudson Taylor and all that. It just percolated and perpetuated. That was all. We need to stop that, right? To stop thinking like that. And God repeatedly in this same chapter, let every man abide in the same calling wherein he is called. Brethren, let every man wherein he is called, therein abide with God. All right? Don't create a new category that is mixed, that will mix up things. All right, so I've said this before, there's no more need for missionary doctors. Seriously. It was meant for that time, and that was what was needed. You cannot borrow a term, missionary doctor, anymore, okay? And if you go there and do social work, then you are doing social work. That is all. You are just a Christian wherever God calls you to. When you have a particular calling that is not a pastor, that's not a full-time worker, then you're a Christian there, all right? That is all. You use your skill to help people you come across, just like in Perth. Because you're a teacher whose nationality is in another country, you have a PR here, gives tuition, then suddenly you're a missionary tuition teacher, right? Why missionary doctors? We saw the trend, right? But it's full-blown today. So you see how it leads to the full-blown social gospel. Right? So please, have this picture very clear in your mind. A motivation to serve, a personal motivation to serve must always, if you say, I am a missionary, you must be sent. That's the whole definition, the basic definition of a missionary, sent. But you say, well, but I want to do this. An individual initiative is always very dangerous. And especially when the initiative is uncalled for, God did not call for people, all right, to mix social work with gospel work. It's uncalled for. And then with the imbibing the erroneous theology of personalism, where everybody is important, right? So this next week we'll cover common good, for example. I must do this, right? It's for the common good. That's why I say it will lead to worse. And with all that, you see how it will always lead to the full-fledged gospel. Please know that. All right, so now, second last slide. Beware of taking prominent social work concepts into your Christian aims. These prominent social gospel concepts, don't take it into your vocabulary and into your way of thinking and your aim. My aim is to be a missionary, this and that. Don't take that in, because that is what they say. You want to go on a mission trip with us? Remember how adopting the social plus gospel work? Remember the orange bubbles? Will always lead denominations and churches. It could be the BP denomination next. It could be BPCWA next, into full-blown social gospel eventually. Stay on course with the calling, abide in it. Stay on course, the calling to the pure gospel. You're a teacher, you're whatever. Stay on course to the pure gospel, not the social gospel. Work as in gospel work, whether you're an individual, share the gospel, all right? Wherever God has put you. With the church also have to stay on course. Now let's read this and then we close. Reading. Lest Satan should get an advantage of us, for we are not ignorant of his devices. We can no longer say that we are ignorant of Satan's devices when it comes to the development, the progression into the social gospel. We can no longer say that as an individual or as a church. If we ignore it, Satan will take advantage of us. All right? Now with that, next week we will cover the perniciousness of the social gospel. Let's turn to God in prayer. What do we have here? Top 5 reasons why church dropouts, what church dropouts say, why they stop attending church. Now please remember 66% of, well, I take the American view, they are the most readily available results. They stop attending church at least a year after turning 18. So from